So this is the business models in flux section. So I think it's reasonably fair to say that our business model has certainly changed quite dramatically in the last 8 months. Some things have changed, some things have not. So I'm going to talk about UE4, about why we've done some of the things we've done over the last year or so. It's going to try not to be a blatant advert, but it will be a little bit. And mostly I will be talking, not talking about technology whatsoever. This is a completely non-technical talk, really looking at some of the philosophy behind what we've done and how we think that plays to the way the industry has changed over the last, 5 years certainly. So, Unreal Engine 4, what is it? Actually quite interesting, show of hands, who has not heard of Unreal Engine 4? Right, I'm off. That's it, we're done. So yeah, it's the latest iteration of our technology. We've been building technology for 20 years for our own games, and for that 20 years we've included that technology and made it available to the development community. Initially as mod tools with the Unreal Tournament series, then Unreal Engine 2 and 3, Unreal Engine 3 being probably the dominant technology during the sort of last console era. And then we come to UE4. Now, what we realized several years ago was that really an iteration on UE3 wasn't going to be that useful in the new era of games development. So we decided to rebuild the engine, ground up, with the modern development philosophies in mind. So the ability to rapid prototype, the ability for artists and designers to be much more productive. These are sort of some of the basic tenets. And as such, UE4, the rendering is absolutely bang up to date. We're always pushing the edge on that. But the real smarts are in the editor and particularly in the blueprint system, which allows the visual scripting of virtually every element of a game, which has allowed smaller teams to do so much more technically, larger teams to be more creatively led. It's had a sort of ramification and a knock on that, and perhaps none of us, even at Epic, really realised would happen. So, with that being said, our old business model was very, very much based on AAA console development or PC development. So it was doing a deal with a big developer or a big publisher for a game that was costing multi-million dollars, tens, 15s, $20 million more. And our internal economy was based on that. Now it's become very, very clear over the last few years that that's no longer the dominant model. It's still a very, very successful model, but it's not the dominant model. There's the ability for independent developers to ship product on a variety of platforms, self-publish, self-market, and our product as it was didn't really fit with that new design philosophy and development philosophy. So we had to do something. And so we came up with UE4 subscription, which we announced at GDC last year. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have made it free for education and student use. And of course, we retain our custom licensing for publishers, big developers, people that want to not pay a royalty or a big buyout or pay a smaller royalty, or require a different level of support. The one absolutely critical feature out of all of this, though, is there is no difference between the product you get as a UE4 subscriber or as an educational user and the custom licensee. It's the same tools. Now, this is not necessarily just about philanthropy and making sure everyone has the same thing. It's practical as well. Just as a company, we can't support 3 different iterations of the engine. It makes way more sense for us just to have the one. Then everyone knows what they're doing, everyone has the same experience, everyone has the same support issues. Educationists can teach the engine fully. It trickles down. So UE4 subscription. So I think we quite kind of dropped a bit of a bombshell at GDC when we announced that we were only going to charge $19 for UE4 source code. I think everyone kind of took a second look and wondered where the catch was. But there is none, clearly. Well, not clearly. The only perhaps slightly confusing bit might be the 5% gross. So that's 5% of the sale price of whatever it is you ship. So if you ship a $10 game, That's, you know, and a consumer buys it for $10, you pay 50 cents to us. If you ship a $60 game, then you're paying 5% of $60. So there's obviously a kind of a scale there. You know, so for digital self-publishing, 5% gross is actually a relatively small number. And I think from a value point of view, most developers accept that as being very reasonable. Now what's happened, you know, we released UE4 subscription into the wild, and for us it was an enormous business risk because it's our source code. And our source code is, you know, the crown jewels of Epic as a company. And we made the decision to make that available to everyone for $19. You know, so the risk there is that it gets ripped off, it gets taunted, etc., etc. People abuse it. The reality is there's been very little of that. What we have found, and we're delighted with and surprised with, is that by doing that, by being that open, by opening up our development processes to the community has actually kind of given that back to us in spades. You know, we have vibrant forums, wikis, all that kind of stuff. And the community itself is contributing and talking to us on a daily basis about what they want from the engine. And this has allowed us to suddenly become a much more open company again. You know, we were founded 20 years ago on the principles of games, you know, shareware versions of games shipping first, editors being available, you know, very much community games developers. And it's kind of turned full circle. We're back where we were. And so we've got the kind of open development for Unreal Tournament. We've got the open development of Unreal Engine. The roadmap is up there for everyone to see. There's no secrets. And what that allows us to do, suddenly, you know, we used to be bound by NDAs, mutual non-disclosure agreements, with everybody we dealt with. You know, no one wanted to talk about what their game was going to be. No one wanted to talk about what our roadmap was. You know, we didn't want to disclose anything, just in case. Suddenly, kind of letting go of all of that has been immensely liberating. You know, now we can talk about what our roadmap's going to be. We can let you, you know, you have source code, which means you can integrate that into the most crazy things you want, and we don't care because if you're doing cool stuff, if it works, it's great, and if it doesn't work, well, it doesn't work. You know, so that's been immensely liberating for us as a company, and has helped us kind of grow back, if there's such a word, to where we were. You know, to become the Epic that we once were, and much more community focused, and much more excited about the games we're developing and the games you're developing with our technology. We've more or less iterated Unreal Engine for every month since we released it. And the last iteration, 4.5, a couple of weeks ago, had 40 features contributed by the community, features and improvements, which again has been a massive, massive change for us. You know, we would never integrate third-party changes into our engine in the past. And again, it's opened us up to, well, you know, it's kind of crowdsourcing the best, isn't it? You know, the features and the improvements that people need get into the engine. So, UE4 subscription, let's talk about that a little bit more, and how it differs. So support is via Answer Hub, forums, wiki, etc. We have 185 tutorial videos online right now. We more or less produce one about every week, one or two every week. Zach Parrish rather, guy who used to head 3D Buzz, fronts most of them. And there is literally everything from opening the editor for the first time, you know, right through to very complex blueprinting issues, rendering issues, etc. And so sort of straight out the box, you've got an experience there. You can get up and running very, very quickly. We also have got over 14,000 threads on the forum. And that's across, you know, the whole variety of subject matter from, you know, art, rendering, programming, just people discussing games. You know, that's the whole lot. But it's still a massive number of threads, let alone posts. And again, this has all been since April when we launched. So we have a massively vibrant community, which we are so impressed with and happy with. We've had the marketplace in position for probably 6 months, where we have been putting packaged content developed by us for free for developers to use within their games, to prototype with, to generally just, you know, have a play with. A month ago, we opened it up to third parties who could start charging for asset packs, plugins, whatever you can conceive of and you might want to sell on the marketplace to do with the engine, you can. And within the month, well, we've had 72, I believe it is. Yeah, 72 items from third parties supplementing the 19 that we added. And we think that's going to be a really, a real growth area because for virtual teams, you don't necessarily have the expertise to do everything, but you can either crowdsource it or you can buy asset packs or plugins that will do a particular thing that you're looking to do. We see that as being a massive area of growth. Okay, so UE4 for education. I think it was about 2 months ago we announced that we would be providing it free for universities to use on as many machines as they need within their faculties. This again is not strictly philanthropic because obviously the more people are taught UE4, the more people can use it when they finish their courses, the more likely they go to developers that are using UE4, the ecosystem rolls round and round. What we were kind of caught on the hop with was just the sheer amount of interest that generated. And so we had quite a backlog of educational establishments apply. Now we do vet them. We make sure that they are genuine educational establishments. They have .ac.uk email addresses over here, but in the rest of Europe there's other criteria. But it's pretty simple to sign up. I guess staffs obviously know how to do it. But then a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we also announced that it is now also free for students. So there's a GitHub student pack, which includes a year's subscription to UE4. And as a student, you can ship a commercial product using that if you wish, and you will pay the 5% gross royalty if you're successful. But there's no restriction on your usage. So if you want to develop a game, or you do develop a game as part of your course, or even outside of your course, there's no restriction on you shipping it. You ship it, and if it's successful, you pay us. And that kind of underlies really how we've looked at the whole of the UE4 subscription process. We've made it as affordable as we possibly can, free in some cases. Because of basically for us, if you're successful as a games developer, then we'll be successful, we'll get our cut. That's how it works, it's that simple. The resources we have to commit to supporting it via the Answer Hub and the wikis and the forum, etc., are reasonably complicated. We put a lot of effort into it. We're always there on the forums answering questions, but it's not as much as if we had to support each one of you individually. So clearly there's a balance there. So custom licensing. So sometime in the future, you've built your game with UE4 subscription and you've been successful and you're thinking about building your next game with UE4. But you've made a nice pot of money maybe, and you want to think about your next product. Why would you go with UE4 Custom? Well, that's a good question because you might be completely happy with the way you use UE4 and the subscription system and the 5% royalty, in which case there's absolutely no reason on earth why you would. The reasons people go with subscription go with custom are sort of a mixture of commercial and business, and legal, really. So a large developer or a publisher is very unlikely to want to pay a gross royalty, especially if they're shipping a retail product. If it's going to retail at $60, but the developer only gets 20% of that, or less even, by the time the publisher's taken their cut and the platform takers their cut, etc. They're still on the hook for the 5% of the 60. That's not something that's going to work. So you can come to us and discuss a custom license. It's under MNDA, so Mutual Non-Disclosure Agreement. Generally, the business model would be a license fee of some description and a royalty. The royalty being based off a definition of net rather than gross. We have a variety of business models under custom that work for free-to-play games, digitally delivered games, mobile games, MMOs, AAA, all of which we talk about confidentially. But the reality is, it's exactly what it says. A custom license is a custom license. The terms are not fixed. We work out what works best for you, what works best for us. We both come to a point where none of us are happy with the result, and then that's probably the sweet spot. So what is the, apart from some of the financial terms, the main differences are you get a different type of support with UE4 Custom. It's through Unreal Developer Network, which is, Unreal Developer Network, what it is, but basically it's a system of mailing lists direct to engineers within Epic. So you post your question. It's not in a public forum. It's in a kind of a forum which is where everyone is under NDA, so there's no risk of confidentiality. You post your question. That gets reviewed internally and posted back to whoever the expert is within Epic, and they answer it directly to you. It also allows for us to deploy engineers directly to you, your studio, and to work on particularly thorny issues, or just to give you kind of updates on how to do stuff. And also allows for the travel of engineers from studios to Raleigh to also address particularly thorny issues. But obviously all of that additional extra comes at some kind of an additional cost. It's also under the EULA that the UE4 subscription guys use. There's some things that large publishers or large companies would find restrictive. So it allows them to renegotiate some of those terms, and it's a slightly different legal relationship. Slightly more complicated, and it takes lawyers to negotiate it, hence it costs that much more. So that's essentially the kind of UE4 ecosystem as it is today. It's continuing to evolve. We've learned a lot from UE4 subscription in terms of the power of the community, which we've then started reflecting into other areas of our business. UT, Unreal Tournament, is perhaps the most obvious example of that. The fact we're trying to collaborate, collaboratively develop a game. We'll release it for free when it's done, or when it comes to that point. I mean, it's already kind of in alpha testing anyway, public alpha testing. And the hook there is, as developers, you could develop a mod for UT and sell it on our marketplace. So you could actually make some money off of that. And we take a cut of whatever sells through marketplace, so we'll make a little bit of money on that as well. So again, it's a kind of a win-win. It's like if we invest our expertise back into you guys, then you guys will kind of pay it back in spades to us. So simply put, that's the kind of journey Epic has been on in the last, publicly it's since GDC. Internally it's the last 2 years, trying to work out what a modern company is like. The challenge we faced was Epic is a premium technology company that had perhaps begun to be perceived very much more as kind of establishment. We've been around a long time, we were a dominant technology, and we were perhaps not approachable to smaller developers, independent developers. The perception was we weren't approachable. That's not strictly true, we probably were approachable, but the perception was the reality in this case. And so, we embarked on this madcap plan to revitalise us as a company and to kind of reflect that back out into the community, which, internally we think has worked pretty well. What do you think? I mean, I'm going to throw it back into you guys a little bit. What's the external perception of Epic now as opposed to maybe a year ago?
Absolutely 100% on. I'm hooked on. I'm already subscribed to your product. So yes, definitely.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else? Any thoughts?
I think it's changed the industry because I think no one was expecting this move, this very bold move. And so I remember that straight after your announcement, Crytek as well made the announcement, and then other companies came out with this business model of releasing the source code of the engine on GitHub or other platforms in order to allow users to look through the code or modify it. I think it's really changed the industry in a very bold way.
Absolutely agree. Even when you look what Sony just now did with their part of, which they always sort of treasured, for their develop and never been really used. Develop magazine actually makes really a large article about it. So in a way you influence the industry. So we as students we can just thank you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's a two-way street. That's what we've learned. Is it's what we've given out has come back threefold actually. So it's been a revelation from that perspective. So, has anyone got anything they would like to ask me? It can be about Epic, it can be about the engine, it can be about the business models.
Yeah, the 5% royalty you pay on the game. You said obviously that's the price that you choose to sell it at.
Yes.
For example, if your game released on Steam, obviously Steam have a lot of sales. So if the game was on sale, it would be 5% of the sale price.
Yes, correct. Yes. So it's 5% of the money paid by the consumer for the game.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So if it starts off at 10, you pay it on the 10, you know, $10. But then if you drop it to $2.99 or whatever, then it's still just the $2.99. It's not a fixed price. Anybody else? Again, yeah, please do.
How do you choose? Obviously, you said the plugins. I think basically the sales plugins. How do you choose between which plugins should be given free to the consumer as part of the subscription, and which ones you should charge for?
Okay, so Epic gives our internally developed content for free. If somebody else, if one of you guys develops a plugin and want to charge £1 for it, that's your choice.
And who sort of do you QA any of the stuff that?
No, we don't, and so that's part of the risk, as it were. Now, obviously, we're not going to allow anything that's dangerous, you know, from a virus or hacking type position, or illegal in terms of licensing. So there'll be a level of check there, but I don't think we don't have the resources to QA the product itself. Anyone else? Yep.
How did the dev team react to this decision of changing the business model? The coders and the engineers, how did the team react?
I think everyone, it was, I mean, for us it wasn't a shock in the way it was for everyone else, because we've been living with it and discussing it, literally for probably 2 years, trying to work out what the approach should be. So we've looked at every single possible angle. And so within the company there was already a level of knowledge that something was going to happen. I think everyone has embraced it because it's difficult to describe, but it really has invigorated the company internally. Suddenly we're back to being a young company again, in a sense. I mean, we're not, because we're an old company and we're quite big now. We're not that huge, but just everyone's that much more enthusiastic because we've suddenly seen that there's this mirror of our enthusiasm out there, which is very flattering. I don't know what that was. Anybody? Any other questions? Let's chuck it back.
With Unreal Development, do you know how much it's going to cost? If you're selling a web scale or something, how much extra you're going to take and go on?
I don't know that at the top of my head. It's not going to be a huge amount.
So what sort of limitations are you going to have on those quality?
That's not I don't even think it's been decided yet, to be honest, and it's not part of the business that I'm particularly involved in, I'm afraid. I think generally, if you wanted, I think the pricing of it is up to you, what you think your value is. And it will be dynamic, so you can change it, so you can gauge market. It's a little bit Thatcherite in some respects, and it's what the market will bear. It's a new market for us. We're not entirely sure how it's going to pan out. And so it's a case of, we'll see what happens, and the market will define itself. Absolutely. Yeah, I think if there's someone who looks like a rising star, we'll certainly be interested. It is a great way of seeing who is out there and the talent that's out there, you're right. So get working. Anybody else? Any other questions?
When can we expect the Unreal 5, since your iteration started rapidly? Right?
Unreal 5 will be hopefully 10 years off. Yeah, we won't. There's no plans. Unreal 4. So we'll get to 4.9. 1.0, or whatever. Yeah, I think, or it's Unreal. UE4 was such a massive reimagining of Unreal technology. you know, it's definitely a once in a decade type project. You know, we couldn't do it any other way. And we believe that the architecture that we've got is now so extensible anyway. Yeah, it could be entirely possible that we don't ever have to do another complete rewrite. Who knows? We have no idea what platforms there's going to be there in 10 years. When we launched UE3, mobile platforms were nothing. You know, there was no capability on mobile platforms for the sorts of games that you could build with our technology. At the end of its life, clearly there was. So who knows what that sort of shift will be over the next 10 years. Holodecks, whatever, who knows.
In terms of platform, I know you support various different platforms and various different mobile platforms as well. So will you just add new ones to that as and when you feel the market?
Yeah, so if, you know, currently we're on virtually every platform. If a platform becomes viable, then, you know, we'll add it.
So is that viable in terms of the number of games that are on?
Yeah, the viable kind of defined as our ability to develop the technology on it, plus the need or the, you know, the market out there. You know, if people are suddenly developing for, I don't know, whatever, new VTech game, console, you know, whatever it happens to be. If something comes out, we'll generally get a pre-warning of that anyway, because we tend to work with most of the hardware providers in one way or another. You know, we'll support it if it looks like it's going to be worthwhile. Now, that's not to say, with your ability to access the source code, that if there was a platform that we weren't supporting, you yourself could then support that platform by just taking the source code and morphing it yourselves. You know, that's not a trivial task. Don't get me wrong, but it is possible. Anybody else? Okay, so we got. That's about bang on, isn't it?
All good, yeah. Yeah, let's go.
Well, thank you very much. I mean,